The world beyond the walls of Winterfell stirred with its usual distant murmurs. Kings and councils in the south grumbling like storms beyond the horizon. Merchants' caravans threading half-frozen rivers. Quiet rumors that a Targaryen girl had found dragon's fire across the sea. But all of it might as well have been phantoms to Eddard Stark on that raw spring dawn. Dawn, in the north, was always a negotiation between gray and silver, ice and the first breath of thaw, and this morning the gods would lingered on the colder side of the accord. Long shadows stretched from red-leaved branches, pooling dark wine around the heart tree's bleached face. Ned stood before the weirwood with the letter clutched tight in his gloved hand, fingers aching where fresh ink bled through the parchment. Robert's seal lay cracked against the damp grass. Even broken, it seemed heavy. "Come south, old friend." The letter had insisted, 3 unforgiving words to crown a scroll of aches. Jon Arryn's death, vacant offices, a kingdom listing into debt and quiet treason. Robert had sounded half a plea, half a demand. "I need you at my side." And on any other morning Ned Stark would have given in. On any other morning the memory of boys racing through the Eyrie's airy halls would have tugged him away from this quiet, snow-flecked life. But today the wind carried another scent. Of earth disturbed where none should have been, of secrets frost could not entirely hush. And so, for the first time since his Lord Father's execution under a mad king, Ned set the king's words aside. He folded the letter once, twice, until the last of Robert's quill marks vanished into a pocket of linen. The weirwood watched, silent witness, sap tears frozen in its eye sockets. Ned felt the gods would listen as he spoke aloud, voice low enough for moss and ravens alone. "I will not leave them," he told the white face. "Not again." An answer came on the breeze. The sigh of cold water under thin ice, the faint rustle of a direwolf pacing near the edge of the wood. Far off, in the kennels, gray wind howled, and the echo carried back a chorus. Summer's deeper voice rumbled next, then Lady's soft keen, Shaggy Dog's wild yip. Even Ghost, silent as the snow that named him, padded out from behind a thick oak to sit at Ned's heel, red eyes settling on the parchment. When the chorus faded, Winterfell itself seemed to breathe. Pipes clanging as hot water stirred, distant hammer beats from Micken's forge, the morning call of stable boys, Maester Luwin's ravens fluttering in their rookery. Small lives, rooted lives, lives that needed him here. Ned turned toward the archway where stone met dripping leaves. Catelyn had been waiting, cloak drawn tight, auburn hair tucked against a stubborn wind. He had not heard her approach, yet there she stood, as though she too had roots in this earth. "You've decided," she said, seeing the folded missive. "I have." Her eyes were the color of deep river water still trapped beneath early ice. She searched his face for doubts, then stepped closer and took his hand, letter and all. "Then we'll hold to it together." He sighed. "Robert will not understand." "Robert is a king," Catelyn answered, voice steady. "A king can survive disappointment. Our children cannot survive losing their father twice. Our children." The words carried him past the anxiety to a memory of Bran's desperate clamor about new saddle designs, of Arya stalking corridors in silent training with Sirio's sticksword, of Robb wearing lordship like an heirloom too heavy for his shoulders, of Sansa's eager letters to a southern court she'd never seen, of Rickon's tiny fists pounding at Shaggy Dog's fur when the pup refused to let the boy ride him like a charger. Even Jon Snow, growing taller each moon, always half-turned toward the wall, needed a father for the few months left before he took the black. Ned's absence would carve a wound in every one of them. And there was the other child, hidden from all the South could know, the boy whose blood might ignite a kingdom if Robert looked too closely. Leaving now risked guards loosening their watchfulness, servants whispering in corridors. Secrets unattended were burdens without straps. So Ned returned the letter to Catelyn's keeping and walked beneath the carved stone lintel into the vast courtyard. Ropes of morning mist curled across flagstones. At the far side, Ser Roderick Castle oversaw young squires trading practice blows, their wooden blades slapping like rain on a thatch roof. Roderick's white whiskers twitched as he saw his lord approach. "My lord," he said, bowing in greeting. "Word from King's Landing?" "Word indeed." Ned motioned him aside toward a bench still crusted with frost. "I will not be the hand," Ned told him. "I will send Northmen I trust to bear our counsel south. But Winterfell needs its lord." Roderick's brow furrowed beneath silvered brows. "His grace will take that hard." "He may, but he has sons of his own now, Ser Roderick. He must understand what it means." Roderick's silence acknowledged both loyalty and doubt. No man alive could truly guess Robert Baratheon's mood from one glass of wine to the next. "And what of Lord Arryn's death?" Roderick asked quietly, mindful of listening squires. "If foul play, I shall send Maester Luwin with Maester Vyman from White Harbor," Ned said. "They can examine the books Jon kept. Manderly ships carry news faster than ravens these days." He glanced southward, as though beyond tower crenellations he might glimpse Jon Arryn's hollow study. "Whatever killed him may yet be found without me." Roderick gripped his lord's arm. "Then we'll make ready for whatever storms your refusal brings." Ned thought storms will come. It was not only Robert's displeasure he feared, it was Lannister hunger. Cersei would see insult where none was intended. Jaime would smile that lion's smile and sharpen his smile into steel. Tywin's rage had felled greater houses than Stark. Ned pictured red gold flames leaping atop distant hillsides, and for a moment he nearly called for ink and quill to undo his choice. Nearly. But then the distant kennels boomed with shaggy joy. Bran's laughter as Summer tackled him into straw. Arya's squeal as Nymeria yanked her braided hair loose. Those living sounds held him fast where parchment could not. 3 days passed in uneasy preparation. Maester Luwin drafted a letter announcing Ned's regrets, each sentence smoothed like a flat stone for skipping across a turbulent pond. He suggested offering Lord Manderly's second son as squire to King Robert, a gesture of northern goodwill. Catelyn penned a parallel missive to her sister Lisa, wrapped in condolences for Jon Arryn and seeds of quiet inquiry. Ned summoned Hallis Malin to choose 20 riders, stalwart men, loyal, swift, to accompany the letter south and keep watch on their path. He ordered hundreds of casks of Wintertown's ale stored and 30 wagons of grain sent to the mountain clans, an old promise to keep them from ranging further. He walked the battlements at dawn and dusk, noting cracks in merlins, counting the ravens ready for flight, feeling every loose stone beneath his boots as if it were a tooth in Winterfell's jaw. Catelyn noticed the deepening creases above his brow one evening while they stood on the balcony outside their bedchamber. A waning moon silvered her hair. "You wear the castle on your shoulders," she whispered, hugging herself against cold. He traced a hand along the balcony's worn granite. "Are we prepared for a siege, Cat?" She blinked. "A siege? If Robert takes insult and the Queen fans it with Lannister gold. Tywin has not marched north since the Trident." Her confidence wavered. "And if the Queen stirs him, the North has always been your shield." "The neck, Moat Cailin. And at Moat Cailin," Ned reminded softly. "Those bastions rot. We've had peace too long." Catelyn laid her hand over his, stilling his restless tapping against stone. "Then we'll rebuild." He studied her profile, the curve of cheekbones strong as weirwood, lashes kissed with hoarfrost, and felt courage root again. Their marriage had begun in grief, yet from those ashes grew a thing sturdier than desire: partnership. If war came, they would stand. Below, torches flared along the training yard. Robb sparred with Theon, both sweat-slick beneath fur-lined cloaks, blades flashing copper in the flame. The clang beat steady as a heart. From the godswood, Ghost watched, pale shadow among shadows. When a strike came too near Bran, perched on the fence to marvel, Ghost growled, low and warning. Theon rolled his eyes and resumed the dance. Ned's children, each shaped by ice and spring thaw, thrived under Winterfell's gaze. Perhaps that was why he now felt the weight of foreboding. The gods seldom permitted such quiet joys to linger untested. On the 7th day after Robert's raven, clouds rolled gray as iron nails across the morning sky. Ned and Maester Luwin awaited Hallis Malin's riders at the main gate. Malin led them out beneath the raised portcullis, banners snapping in a wind heavy with unmelted snow. 9 and 10 riders fell into formation behind him, 20 in all as ordered, though the 20th helm seemed large on the boy beneath.
Ned, Frau Ned.
"Who is the lad?" he asked. Hallis saluted. "My lord, your son begged place among us." He lifted his visor. Bran's face peered out, eyes shining with unshed protest. "Bran." Ned spoke his name like a command, motioning him forward. The boy dismounted, cheeks aflame, half from cold, half from fury. "I can shoot from horseback better than most of them," Bran declared, "and I'll not slow them. You are 9. Ned crouched until the boy's breath misted against his beard. "And this road may turn dark. My wolf will guard me," Bran insisted, nodding toward Summer lurking beyond gate pillars. Indeed, the direwolf's yellow eyes fixed on Bran's every tremor. Ned rested hands upon the boy's shoulders, feeling fragile bones beneath wool. "Another time," he promised. "Today you guard your sisters, for I must see to matters at the wall soon. The Night's Watch sends word of deserters. I ride at dawn." Bran's defiance faltered at deserters. He swallowed. "You'll take Jon. When he's sworn his vows," Ned said. "He will guard the realm. Until then, I need him here to help." Bran bit his lip but nodded, gripping his father's wrist before stepping back. Summer padded up to nose Ned's hand, then retreated at a click of Bran's tongue. Mallin's riders departed down the King's Road in a gust of hooves and winter dust. Ned watched until the knots of fur and steel vanished behind a swale of bare birches.
Meester Luvin exholet fog.
"Gods send them fair travel," Ned answered without looking, "and gods send us wisdom for what follows." It followed sooner than even Ned had feared. 3 nights later, a raven hammered its beak against the rookery bars like a blacksmith plying grief. Maester Luwin's lantern painted the corridor walls amber as Ned broke the seal. Gold wax, the Lannister lion roaring. "Lord Stark," the letter began in precise script. "Your refusal is duly noted and deeply regretted." Beneath courteous trappings, every sentence girded an accusation. Ned's absence, it implied, left the king vulnerable to unwholesome counsels. The Queen invited Lord Stark to reconsider, for the good of the realm, of course, and to escort his family in honor to King's Landing within a fortnight. "We await your swift reply." The signature, Lord Tywin Lannister, Warden of the West. Not Robert, not Cersei, the father. Ned stared at the lion sigil until his vision blurred. Tywin's words were velvet over iron, entreaty masking the threat of siege engines already oiled. The fortnight's deadline was a collar. They would yank if the wolf refused the chain. He set the parchment down and rubbed eyes gone hot from strain. Beyond Luwin's tower window, a ghostly shimmer flickered, a low aurora of lights rippling above the wall, if rumor was true. The old rangers swore such lights foretold winters measured in graves. Ned turned to Maester Luwin, who stood nibbling the quill's feather. "Send answer by dawn," Ned said. "Inform Lord Tywin that Winterfell values King Robert's friendship beyond measure. Inform him also that the roads grow impassable, that the snows have come early, that passage south with children in tow would risk the king's dear godsons and daughters' frostbite. We shall make ready for next summer, when winds soften." Luwin's bushy brows rose. "A polite refusal of a refusal. Polite stone," Ned corrected. "The first blow in a war of courtesies." The maester bowed and began to write. Ned left the rookery, descending spiral stairs until he reached the courtyard. Snowmelt dripped between stones, but overhead clouds closed tight like a mailed fist. He crossed toward the armory, where Micken's forge belched orange sparks into crisp dusk. Sparks hissed on fresh-fallen snow as Ned approached. Micken lifted his hammer midway through a stroke, wiping sweat. "My lord, sharpen every sword," Ned ordered, voice low. "We may need them keener than courtesy." Micken's dark eyes sharpened in turn. "Aye!" Ned turned and nearly collided with Theon Greyjoy swaggering across the yard. Bow slung, smirk in place. "Bad news from Daddy Lion?" Theon asked. Ned ignored the insolent glint. See that the ravens are stocked. You may need to carry letters across the rills if wings fail us." Theon scoffed but nodded. Tomorrow he would boast in the hall. A kraken does not fear a lion's roar. Ned almost smiled. Ruffian as Theon was, his confidence might be a weapon Winterfell would need. Hours later, as torches guttered and keep walls groaned under a wind rising from the shivering sea, Ned sat before the hearth in his solar. He studied maps of the neck, traced potential ambush points should Lannister outriders attempt the boggy causeways. Fatigue dragged at his eyes, yet each time lids fell, they conjured other images. Boys burned alive in southern camps, girls bartered for treaty beds, little Rickon sobbing because father was gone and mother would not say why. He opened his eyes to embers. Soft footfalls signaled Catelyn. She entered without cloak, hair loose, nightdress whispering like a secret. Wordless, she knelt and took his calloused hand between hers. Her eyes held questions he could not answer. "Tell me," she murmured. Ned spoke of Tywin's letter, of deadlines and winter roads, of preparations he had ordered Mikken and Roderick to begin. When he finished, Catelyn rose, paced the carpet's edge, stopped by the window where falling snow ghosted the air. "I remember the bells at King's Landing," she said quietly, "and the stink of pyres after the sack. I remember houses burning from Flea Bottom to the Gate of the Gods. I will not see that in Winterfell. Nor I." He stood, crossing to hold her shoulders. "Yet if war comes, it will come whether I ride south or no." She turned, lifting his chin with fingers warm despite chill. "Then we will meet it together. But we must plan more than sharpen swords."
Alliances? Ned.
"The North alone is strong, but not unassailable. Think of Riverrun. Think of the Vale." Only then did he realize, by refusing to leave, he bound the Starks to a lonely keep in a season of wolf's winds. Unless crossing ravens carried vows of mutual defense, Winterfell might stand alone against both South and Winter. "Send for Lord Manderley, Lady Hornwood, Galbart Glover, Lord Karstark," he said. "And a letter to Riverrun. Hoster Tully's ink may be weak these days, but his son commands many swords." Catelyn nodded, already shaping words in her mind. "And Lisa," Ned hesitated. "Lisa sees shadows. She will not heed until they scratch at her gates." He sighed. "But send her comfort. She may listen for her sister's sake if not mine." They planned until logs collapsed in the grate and dawn pinked the icicles on the window frame. When at last Catelyn dozed against his shoulder, Ned laid her on their bed and crept out into corridors humming with early rising servants. Outside the armory, he found Jon Snow leaning against a pillar, Ghost at his side. The boy's dark eyes glittered. "You ride for the wall today?" Jon asked. "Not today." Ned leaned beside him, watching smokeless clouds breathe from the direwolf's nostrils. "Perhaps not soon. Too much here requires a Stark's eye." Jon's jaw clenched. "Then I will wait too." Ned turned. "You wish to delay your vows?" Jon shrugged. "If the realm needs swords, I'd rather fight for my family than freeze atop a wall while others march." Ned felt both pride and alarm twist within. "The wall fights for all families," he reminded gently. Yet in that moment he wondered if binding Jon to a black cloak was wise. A bastard sworn to Night's Watch could not press a claim or brandish a Stark banner. Convenient for politics. But perhaps, if storms gathered, the realm might need one more Stark in open field. "Hold your decision," Ned told him. "Train harder than ever. When snows deepen we shall speak again. Until then, guard your siblings." Jon's nod was solemn, adult. It struck Ned like a sword tip. Children should not wear such gravity so young. By week's end, Winterfell thrummed like a forge. Wagons of quarried stone rattled in from the hills, ropes of fresh-cut pine for scaffolds piled near the broken battlements Ned had marked. Fishermen from White Harbor delivered salted cod and news of Lannister galleys sighted near Gulltown. Commerce, they claimed, though the ship's holds looked built for horses. Ravens flew out daily bearing messages sealed with dire wolves, trout, and flayed men. One flew east to Bear Island. Lady Meage Mormont's reply came swift. Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north whose name is Stark. That defiant line stiffened spines in the hall when Maester Luwin read it aloud. Even Theon laughed approval, banging a cup. At the high table, Ned caught Robb's eye. His eldest sat straighter, a flush of purpose lighting cheeks once soft with youth. Across from him, Sansa frowned at Lady Mormont's coarse script, and Arya tried to mimic it with a crust of bread, carving rude letters in gravy. Rickon, too small to grasp import, drummed a spoon, though Shaggy Dog's yellow stare suggested he understood more than most. Ned inhaled the warm air laced with roast beef, spiced squash, fresh bread, the familiar hearth smoke tang. Tonight felt like feast, yet tension flickered beneath songs. Harps strummed, but men carried knives sharper than the cutting meat. Women whispered of silvered lions riding winter storms. Later that night, thunder rolled across Godswood skies, yet no lightning followed. From ramparts, Ned watched clouds churn, black on black, until he swore he saw shapes sliding beneath their bellies. Pale serpents, slithering in and out of tearing seams. He almost called for Brandon's ghost to swear his eyes lied. Instead, he gripped the stone so hard knuckles whitened. Winter was coming, true, but perhaps other things older than winter stirred as well. Another raven alighted on Maester Luwin's sill before dawn a fortnight after Tywin's missive. Ned hurried to the solar, pulse racing. This time the wax was deep blue, stamped with a crowned stag. Robert himself. Relief warred with dread. Old friend. The king's booming hand wrote. The council mutters like old women. The queen burns hotter than the Dornish sun. Yet I will not command where I once asked. Stay in your north if you must. But send me your faith that you do this for more than northern snow. Below the words, a blot where Quill had paused, as though Robert wished to confess something and could not. Then, I will hold a tourney at King's Landing for the boy's name day. Your absence will be noted. Gods keep you safe, Ned. Trust no one. Ned traced that last line until the ink smudged his thumb. Trust no one. From Robert, whose trust was as free as ale mugs, those words chilled him more than mountainous snows. He sealed the letter into the iron strongbox under his desk, locked it, and sent for Catelyn and Robb. They came half-dressed, Robb pulling on boots, Catelyn's braid hastily woven. Ned told them Robert's words. Catelyn's mouth tightened. Robb's eyes flashed with eagerness to ride, to act. Father, let me go in your stead, Robb offered, chest swelling. A Stark must be seen. Ned's refusal came gentle but firm. They would read your youth as weakness. And not being seen at all? Robb challenged. Ned weighed it. Better to be unseen than underestimated in the lion's den. Yet he could not dismiss the peril of leaving King's Landing to Lannister Council alone. He thought of the child King Joffrey or Prince Tommen, whichever Robert might place power upon should he drink too deep, and of Cersei weaving golden snares. Ned considered sending Theon, whose brash tongue might misstep, or Roderick, whose honor posed no subtlety. In the end he chose Maester Luwin once more, disarming in scholarship, trusted by Jon Arryn, able to read between lines. But as dawn colored the snowbanks pink, Ned questioned if any envoy would be enough. Across the yard, Arya and Bran practiced balancing on fence rails, arms winging. Jon coached them, wooden practice swords clacking. Ghost circled like silent referee while Summer barked at every misstep. Robb joined them, laughter cutting through tension. Ned watched from window until tears blurred his vision. Not of sadness, but of a fierce, almost fearful love. I must keep them safe, he thought, knuckles white against sill. Because beyond those games, far beyond moors and mountain passes, a lion's growl deepened. And further still, where black water met foreign stars, whispers told of sigils older than direwolf or lion, signs written in blue fire on windswept ice. If Robert's fears bore truth, the game they all played no longer fit the shape of a throne. It fit the shape of the world. The first assault did not come by sword or siege, but by coin. It began with a murmur in Wintertown. Merchants complaining Lannister bankers halted lines of credit once guaranteed by Casterly Rock. Dusty carts laden with iron or from the mines of the north found ports suddenly charging double tariffs. Word filtered through Davos Seaworth sailors that Lord Peter Baelish, the king's master of coin, had redirected certain subsidies southward. House Stark's coffers, fattened by decades of careful stewardship, now drained like ale spilled on a banquet table. Slow at first, then alarming. Catelyn summoned Septon Chael to audit granary tallies. Ned conferred with Wyman Manderly's envoy in secret by hearthlight. They mapped supply lines, rerouting grain through Gulltown under Arryn colors. But each plug in the wound bled anew in some other ledger. "Gold is a stealthier sword than steel," Catelyn said after another sleepless night, cool scratching. Ned answered, "Then we will fight with silver and faith." Yet he knew faith did not feed soldiers. Robb doubled training hours for the garrison. Arya convinced Jon to spar with real blades, dulled edges but true weight. Bran devised pulley rigs to help him climb walls faster even with his weaker leg. Rickon took to sleeping curled against Shaggy Dog in the Great Hall, as though the dire wolf could guard dreams along with flesh. The North hardened, and in that hardening Ned found grim assurance. If war came, it would meet a people already carved from stone and storm. But a part of him, perhaps the part that once believed in songs, still hoped a single well-chosen gesture might end the shadow war before winter found flesh. So he chose his gesture carefully. He sent Catelyn south. It was not a decision made lightly. Catelyn's Tully blood might ease Lysa's suspicions, might coax truths about Jon Arryn's death, might see if the Vale could yet be roused. She could travel with Lord Manderly's grain convoy, less conspicuous than a Stark banner. And she carried letters cryptic enough that, if intercepted, Lannisters would glean little but courtesy. When Ned told her, she protested only once. "If you think me safer in the Vale, you misjudge Lysa's riddles." But she packed. At dawn they parted in the Godswood. The bark breath of the heart tree felt colder than ever. He pressed her palm to his lips, then to the scar along his leg earned at the trident. "Return swift," he whispered. "I will," she promised, eyes shining. "Keep them safe." They embraced until the horses grew restless. Then she mounted, gray cloak fluttering. Robb rode escort with Ser Roderick to the neck. Arya begged to go. Ned refused. Bran waved from a tower window. Rickon sniffled against old Nan's skirts. Jon watched in silence, his envy a shadow under jawline. Catelyn's party disappeared into white mists rising from the hot pools. Winterfell exhaled, emptier. Night came early, black as the caverns beneath the crypts. Ned walked those crypts alone, torch sputtering against chill. He knelt before Lyanna's statue, her stone eyes soft in shadows. "I swore to keep your promise," he told the air thick with her remembered scent of winter roses. "And I swear still. But how many promises can one man keep before the truth claws free?" Ghost appeared at his side, silent sentinel. Ned rested a hand on the direwolf's head. Somewhere above, the storm began muffled drumming on the keep's roofs. He felt, rather than saw, the world shifting. A subtle quake in the bedrock of fate, as though all paths now bent around Winterfell's refusal. In that tremor, he sensed both doom and some fierce flame of hope. For by standing firm, he had thrown the game out of rhythm. The players would scramble, and sometimes, in chaos, cracks opened wide enough for light. Yet the light might also blind. Ned rose, torchlight licking stone faces of long-dead kings. He retraced steps to the spiral stair, emerged into corridors haunted by torch shadows. When he entered the Great Hall, he found Jon and Arya sparring by firelight, Ghost and Nymeria circling like mirrored moons. Robb had not yet returned. Bran sat high in a chair carved with direwolves, reciting histories to Rickon from a leather-bound tome. The scene burned into Ned's memory, the North's future arrayed in fragile patterns of youth and will. He felt in that instant, deep, marrow truth, that by refusing to leave Winterfell, he had set all of them on a knife. But whether the edge would bleed them or sever bonds that chained them to an unjust throne, only the gods knew, and perhaps the gods would not tell. Days stretched into a quiet siege of messages and maneuver. Catelyn reached the bloody gate safely. A raven confirmed Lisa's mood erratic yet receptive. Robb returned with Ser Rodrik, reporting rising prices in White Harbor but no Lannister banners. Jon's training intensified. He sparred with Ser Rodrik's best men and rarely lost. Arya sneaked into council meetings, hidden behind curtains, soaking up whispers of trade and war. Bran mapped new routes along the Winterfell walls, dreaming of flight. Rickon grew taller in Shadow's shaggy dog cast. Ned slept little. Each night he visited the rookery, waiting. Each dawn he walked the parapets, scanning horizons for dust plumes. None came, until one dawn beneath a sky washed pearl by first snow. Ned saw a rider on the King's Road, cloak the color of tarnished sunlight. A Lannister cloak. He ordered gates shut, archers ready. The rider carried no banner but raised empty hands. Ned met him at the drawbridge flanked by Robb and Jon, both armored. The courier knelt, showing palms stamped with the lion seal in blood-red wax. "Message from Lord Tywin," he said, voice trembling. Ned took the scroll. The rider's horse trembled too. 30 northern bows could spook any beast. Breaking the seal, Ned read, "Last grace has withered on the vine. I come for harvest." Signed in bold strokes, Tywin Lannister. Beneath that, smaller script, "Bend the knee or meet the roar in snow." Ned's grip tightened. Snowflakes twirled between sky and ground, as though even the heavens' ash fell in anticipation of fire below. He turned to Robb and Jon. "Summon the banners." Robb's eyes blazed. Jon's jaw set like ice. Somewhere behind them, Bran's gasp echoed up the wall. Ned looked past them to Winterfell's towers, to the great hall's roaring hearth, to the godswood where red leaves shook. He pictured Catelyn crossing moonlit Eyrie bridges, Tyrion Lannister perhaps watching from shadows, the wall shimmering under auroral lights, a Targaryen girl across the narrow sea teaching stone eggs to quicken. Threads of fate spanning continents now converged on this refusal. He raised his voice so that the sentries could hear, so that the heart tree might carry the words to old gods and new. "Winterfell stands," he said, "and the north with it." The wind accepted the vow, swirling snow like petals. Somewhere deep, a dire wolf howled. Not hunger, not fear, but promise. And the game began anew. Robb reached the end of the courtyard just as the horn atop the first keep called the garrison to arms. The raw note trembled through the stones and bled into his veins, quickening his step from stride to near run. He found Ser Rodrik assembling a knot of guards near the gatehouse, each man strapping breastplates still warm from Micken's forge. Frost steamed off the metal like breath. Ser Rodrik's whiskers twitched at Robb's approach. "Your Lord Father? On the battlements." Robb tightened the laces of his own brigandine. "He wants every captain in the hall at moonrise. The banners ride at first light." Rodrik grunted, half pride, half worry. "So soon?" "The sooner, the steadier," Robb said, echoing his father's words. Yet even as he spoke, he felt how thin a 19-year-old voice sounded among veterans twice his age. The weight of Winterfell's defense now pressed on his shoulders like a wet bearskin. He forced his spine straight and repeated the order. Rodrik saluted and bellowed names. Steel whispered from scabbards. Robb left them and crossed the yard to the forge. Sparks sputtered against pre-dawn murk as Micken hammered rivets into a plain round shield. Bran sat on a stool nearby, sketching the layout of the wolf's den into a parchment map, one leg swinging. Gray wind rested at Bran's feet, muzzle between paws. Robb ruffled his brother's hair. "You should be Abed." Bran looked up, ink smudged on his cheek like war paint. "Couldn't sleep." "Nor can Winterfell," Micken muttered, eyes never leaving the hot iron. "Already had 3 men asking me for double-edged axes since moonset. Folk hear Tywin's coming. They think to chop lions in 2 strokes." Robb managed a wan smile. "Can you forge that many axes?" "Can forge a prayer into steel if I must." Micken drenched the shield in a quench barrel. Steam whooshed, but prayers blunt unless wielded by steady hands. "Keep your lads fed and I'll keep them armed." Robb curled cold fingers about the hilt of his sword. They'll stand. Ned held counsel in the solar beneath a map long faded by candle heat. The map showed Westeros graven in fine ink, coast smudged where rain had once leaked through roofing tiles. Benjen Stark's raven, trapped by storms at Eastwatch, pecked irritably inside a wicker cage in the corner. Its croak punctuated tense silence. Maester Luwin spread fresh reports across the table. Writs of fealty signed by Houses Umber, Karstark, and Glover. Ledgers of grain remaining after winter stores. A dispatch from Lord Manderley promising riverboats laden with salt fish and 500 trained sailors. Ned rubbed 2 fingers along his temple, reading and rereading until quills blurred. To his right sat Jon Snow, arms folded, face unreadable save for the glimmer in his dark irises each time a plan required scouts. To Ned's left stood Arya, forbidden yet unbudging, her practice blade sheathed but her questions unsheathed like needles. She leaned forward on the balls of her feet like a cat ready to spring. Ned lowered the parchment. Lord Karstark sends 800 spears. Great Jon Umber sends 600, plus 50 archers riding with his second son. The Glovers offer 400 mailed swords and half as many bowmen. Counting Winterfell's own strength, we may muster 2500 by full thaw. Less than Ser Brynden had at the Blackwater, more than Stannis took north of the Wall. He exhaled. If Tywin comes with half his Westerland banners, we stand outnumbered 3-1. Jon spoke first. Numbers on parchment don't ride through mountain snows. The neck will slow them. They may come by sea, Arya argued. Cersei's uncle commands the royal fleet, and finds ice with every league north of the Bight. Luwin countered gently. Lord Celtigar's galleys are not built for frozen surf. Ned tapped the map where the King's Road cut through the neck. Moat Cailin remains our key. If Tywin means to march, those towers must choke his host until hunger turns him south again. We repair the causeway spikes, rig firepots, flood the ditches. Send ravens to House Reed. Howland knows every pool that swallows wagons. Arya's eyes shone. Let me ride to Greywater. I'll bring Lord Reed to council.
No.
You stay.
Nedets tone softened her swiftfrauen.
When war looms, the pack keeps close. Arya huffed but subsided. Jon asked, do we send word to King's Landing? Ned stared at the raven cage. I have sent word enough. Robert warns me to trust no one. I fear he can trust none around him. If I write again, the Queen will read every letter. So we fight. Jon's knuckles whitened. We prepare to. Ned rolled the map. War is many rooms and many locks. If we bar enough of them, perhaps violence turns aside. That evening Robb led a company onto the King's Road. They carried axes, saws, and picks instead of spears. Their task: fell tall pines along the verge, drag the trunks across the roadway, and spike them with iron nails Mikken had forged. The thickets of boles would slow cavalry, channel infantry into murderous bogs. Robb worked alongside them, sleeves rolled, palms blistering. He hauled ropes while Theon Greyjoy swung an axe with Sea Raider gusto. Better work than polishing helms, Theon said between strokes. My father would laugh to see a road choked. Ironborn prize the sea's open lane. Robb hauled another trunk. Your father has not faced 20,000 lions in snow. Theon grinned. Nor 20,000 krakens, sadly. But I'll gut a few lions for song's sake. His axe shivered through bark. He paused, glaring south down the frosted road. You truly think they'll come? Tywin rarely threatens idly. And yet he threatened your father by raven instead of steel. Theon spat. Old man's roar may have lost teeth. Robb said nothing. He kept hauling until sweat soaked his linen despite frigid air. When dusk dimmed to indigo, they made camp by a ruined watchtower. Theon brought wine from his saddlebag. They passed the skin around the fire, voices low. Northmen sang a dirge of the last hero. Theon hummed a Ribbled Isles tune under his breath until eyes silenced him. Robb lay with his cloak for blanket, staring at the tower's shattered crown. How many believed Tywin would truly march? How many would falter when lion banners appeared? Responsibility gnawed him rawer than any wind. Yet beneath worry sparked something fiercer. The chance to prove himself worthy of Winterfell before Southern swords wrote his worth for him. He slept clutching that thought like a pommel. Arya found Jon in the Gods Wood near midnight. Moonlight spilled silver across the pool, ice panes cracking under a slow thaw. Jon knelt beneath the heart tree, Ghost at his side. His sword lay across his knees. Arya stepped on a stick. Jon looked up. "Can't sleep." "Either can you," she shrugged. She sat cross-legged facing him. "You think father will let you fight?" "Depends what fighting looks like." Jon traced the wolf-shed pommel. "If the wall sends for aid, he may ride north instead." Arya toyed with a fallen red leaf, twirling the stem until it snapped. "They always tell me the Godswood is to pray. I've tried. The gods never answer. Maybe they answer in ways you miss." She tossed the stem into the pool. "Or maybe the old gods listen better when we act." She drew needle and placed it between them. "I'm going to fight too." Jon's smile flickered. "And if father forbids it, I'll dodge his forbiddings." She shrugged again. "Needle knows the way." Jon reached to pat her shoulder. "Stay quick, then." She covered his hand with hers. "You too." For a long spell they listened to leaves rustle like distant applause. Somewhere beyond the walls a lone direwolf howled. Ghost answered, voice low and haunting. The pool's thin ice cracked at last and a chain of bubbles rose, bursting faintly. Jon whispered, "If the day comes, guard Bran." Arya nodded. "And Sansa." Arya grimaced but nodded once more. Jon grinned despite himself. "Even Septa Mordain." That earned him a punch on the arm. Ghost chuffed. Jon caught her wrist mid-swing and they laughed, the sound swallowed by ancient trunks. Catelyn's journey across the mountains of the moon stretched longer than any maester's chart predicted. Landslides clogged passes. Sudden snows forced her guards to tunnel narrow tracks with shovels. At the high pass they met 3 clansmen wearing lion brooches. Sellswords bribed to harry Eyrie convoys. Ser Roderick's sword left 2 in drifts. The 3rd fled limping with arrow fletching in his thigh. Catelyn kept the brooch to show Lysa. When at last the Eyrie loomed above them, Lysa's sentries lowered a basket to winch her up the sheer heights. Moon-door winds howled as the basket swayed. Catelyn clutched the railing, cold cutting her lungs. She thought of river mists at Riverrun, soft compared to this cliff-face knife. She thought of Ned reading Tywin's threat, brow furrowed. She prayed to the 7 that the north held. Inside the Eyrie, Lysa greeted her with a brittle smile, eyes darting from every shadow. She dismissed servants and ushered Catelyn to a solar walled in pale blue stone. "They poison everything," were Lysa's first words. "Even the air. I smell lions in my son's sheets." Catelyn placed the lion brooch on a table. "On the high pass." Lysa recoiled then leaned, fascinated. "It spreads," she breathed. "I told you." "You told me little," Catelyn replied, unfastening her snow-crusted cloak. "But I am here to learn the rest." "Who killed your husband?" Lysa's gaze fixed on the brooch. "Not just one blade, a pride." She poured wine with shaking hands. "They want the throne before the cub is grown. They fear what Jon Arryn knew." What did he know? That the throne's cubs are lions, not stags. Catelyn felt the floor tilt. He proved this, or near enough for the queen to tremble. Lysa swallowed the wine, crimson staining her lips. He planned to send word to the king upon his return from Storm's End, and instead he sickened. With tears of Lys, so the whisperers claim. Lysa's hand clenched the goblet. "I fled for the Vale to keep my son safe. You must flee too, Cat. Take your children from Winterfell. Lions devour all." Catelyn thought of Bran sketching ramparts, of Arya's quicksilver grin, of Ned's patient eyes. The stark words are not flee south. They may become flee if winter brings lions. Catelyn's temper flared. "My husband stands at Moat Cailin even now to keep winter north of his children. Will you stand with him?" Lysa's voice fell to a whisper. "The Eyrie stands alone." Catelyn realized persuasion would be stone-long labor, but stone could crack. She drew out Ned's letter and placed it beside the lion brooch. "Read, then decide." Lisa's fingers trembled over the seal. Catelyn stepped to the window, peering across blank air toward distant peaks. Somewhere far beneath that horizon her family made ready for war, and here within this airy cage she must forge an alliance while falcons screamed above snow-white eaves. Snow fell heavier in the north. White mounds swallowed practice dummies in the yard. Smith fires burned night-long to keep water from freezing in bellows. Bran spent days mapping Moat Cailin, marking towers that still stood, pits that had collapsed into treacherous sinkholes. One twilight he wheeled into Ned's solar and spread the parchment over candle stubs. "See here," he said, tapping a long rectangular keep. "The gatehouse tower has 2 staircases. If we collapse this one, invaders must funnel along the south stair. Roderick can place archers on the landing." Ned studied the meticulous lines. "How fare your lessons with Maester Luwin?" "Numbers bend," Bran answered. "Stones don't."
Ned smiled.
"Numbers feed armies so stones can stand." He traced the drawing. "This will serve." Bran's face glowed. "I want to ride with you when you go." "When I go?" Ned echoed, setting the map aside. He knelt by Bran's chair. "Do you recall the tale of young Artos the Implacable?" Bran nodded. He held Winterfell against Grey Iron raiders while Lord Baron marched the host. And Artos was 12. Ned squeezed his son's shoulder. "You are older in wisdom than many grown men. But your strength. I can fire a short bow from the parapet." Bran's jaw set. "If arrows are raining, they don't know who looses them." "I know," Ned said gently. Bran's mouth tightened, tears glossing his eyes. Ned pulled him close until Bran's breath hitched against his collar. "I only want to do my part." Bran's voice muffled. "You already do." Ned kissed his forehead. "Moat Cailin will stand taller for your measures." Bran sniffled but nodded, wiping his face with sleeve. "Then win." Ned watched him will away, small back straight. In that moment he vowed that, if war marched to Winterfell's walls, it would not reach this child. He turned to other scrolls. One, sealed with a kraken, demanded Theon's return in exchange for neutrality. Another, from Bear Island, offered Meege Mormont's second daughter as courier between North and Sisters. Ned penned replies until sunrise, quill scratching like wind over fresh snow. On the 12th day of the new moon, scouts returned with news. A host in crimson and gold banners 15,000 strong camped outside the Twins. Lord Frey granted passage across the Green Fork for a reasonable toll. The Lannister host was led not by Lord Tywin but by Ser Stafford, a cousin eager for martial renown.
Ser Kevan Kemandid Rearguard.
The lion had tested the water with a paw. Robb read the report aloud in the Great Hall. Sansa gasped. Arya cursed loud enough to make Septa Mordain pale. Jon's hand drifted to his sword. Ned remained motionless. "The Twins," he repeated. "Then they mean to skirt the neck by river barges."
Ser Rodrik Spat.
"Trust Freys to sell tolls like pies." Ned rose. "We ride to the neck tomorrow. Grey Wind and Ghost lead scouts. Roderick, you and Halder take 200 to Greywater Watch. Seek Howland Reed's aid in harrying barges." Robb stiffened. "And I command Moat Cailin?" "You command the vanguard with me," Ned corrected. Surprise flashed in Robb's blue eyes. "The moat must be held, but Stafford's host must be cut before it touches marsh. We meet them on the causeway." A hush stole the hall as wind steals heat. Then a roar rose, from Great John Umber foremost, cheers rumbling rafters as cups slammed tabletops. Even Theon stood, grinning. Ned lifted a hand. "Tomorrow," he repeated. The cheers ebbed. Sansa bolted from the table. Arya followed. Jon watched them go, dilemma plain, sister or preparations. He turned to Ned. "May I serve as outrider?"
Ned nodded.
"Choose 6 swift companions. Ride at dusk." Jon strode out, ghost padding silent. Ned felt the air stir where his son passed, like a blade unsheathed. Sansa sat on the steps beneath the broken tower, tears freezing on her cheeks. Lady pressed her head into Sansa's lap, whimpering. Arya plopped beside her. They'll be all right. You don't know. Sansa stroked Lady's ears. Robb might fall. Father. Her voice cracked. Arya swung her legs. Father's harder to kill than Tywin's whole host. He has Stark blood. So does Mother, and she's gone. She'll come back. Arya plucked a tuft of straw and tossed it. Mother always comes back. Sansa wiped her eyes. I wish we could help. Arya drew needle, balancing it on her forefinger. We can. When the Lannisters come, we'll hold Winterfell. You at the walls with Lady, me in the shadows with Needle. Sansa sniffed. I'm no warrior. You have a tongue sharper than half the swords here, Arya said. Ask Septa, your words cut. Sansa glanced sideways, half-smile flickering. You're silly. A deadly silly. Arya sheathed Needle. Come. We have practice. She stood, tugging Sansa's sleeve. We learn every corridor so no one can corner us. Reluctant smile grew. Like the catacombs game when we were smaller. Exactly. They jogged inside, direwolves trotting behind. Above them, the sky bruised red as coals, promising storms. The column rode from Winterfell at dawn, pennants snapping. Ned led on his gray stallion, cloak of mottled white and charcoal. Beside him Robb rode a young dun courser, gray wind loping on the snow crust like a ghost. Jon and his outriders had left hours earlier. No raven yet returned. They wound past the white knife, frozen edges gleaming, and through the wolfswood where sunlight glimmered on ice-shagged branches. Hairs burst from drifts, scattering before clattering hooves. Outlaws watched from shadows, eyes wide at the armed tide. By second dusk, the army camped where the King's Road thinned into a stony track south. Fires spotted the night. Ned moved from circle to circle, speaking with Mormont shield maidens, with Glover bowyers, with Karstark captains. He listened more than he spoke. He smelled anxiety beneath boiled oats and horse sweat. Yet he saw steel in their spines too. The North had survived dragons once. A lion was but a cat in frost. Near midnight, a horn moaned from the north rim. Riders approached. Ned stood as Jon dismounted. Snow clumped on his cloak. Ghost's coat looked dipped in starlight. Jon knelt. The host advances. Stafford crosses the twins at dawn. Half the foot already south bank. They have trebuchets. Ned drew breath. Numbers. Near 12,000 across, 3,000 cavalry. And supplies? Jon's lips thinned. Barges heavy with grain. Twice as many wagons as men. Good. Ned turned to his captains assembling at his back. 5 miles of causeway separate them from firm ground. We ride to greet them at the halfway stone. Robb's hand flexed on his sword. Will Fry close the gates behind them? If coin enough remains on lions, Ned said. Fry will open more. He looked at the faces gathered, gray-bearded Umber, Fox-quick Glover, Karstark grim as a starless night. We are fewer, Ned said, voice low but carrying. We are colder. We are north. The marsh knows our feet, the wind our breath. We hold the causeway. We break their wagons. We feed their grain to crows. A murmur rose, agreement thick as pitch. Ned raised a fist. At dawn. Dawn painted the neck in lurid purples. Mist curled over black waters of the moat. Ned's host formed across the broken towers, shields rim to rim. Reed crannogmen slithered through bogs, reed boats bearing tar pots. Jon and Theon led a line of archers along a raised dike, wax-wrapped bowstrings taut. First banners of Lannister crimson appeared through haze. Trumpets sounded thin, as though reluctantly. Stafford rode in gilded plate, helm crowned with a roaring lion. He raised a mailed fist. The host advanced. The moat answered with silence. 200 yards in, the front rank slowed. The causeway tilted downward into water hidden by brush. Horses stumbled, screamed, spears thrust from mire. Crannogmen skewering calves, dragging riders down to drown in brown murk. Panic rippled like a thrown stone. Stafford shouted orders. Crossbowmen fired into reeds. Nothing moved but dead horses. Then gray wind howled. Northmen rose from behind breastworks of piled rocks, loosed arrows in volleys. Shafts hissed, finding gaps in Lannister shields. Theon bellowed a laugh. Jon loosed, notch draw release, each arrow a rhythm in his chest. Stafford rallied, wheeling knights along the shallower west path. Ned watched from the gatehouse tower. He signaled with a scarlet flag. Reed torches flared. Tarpots sailed, arced, burst into sheets of emerald flame upon wagons laden with grain. Horses reared, breaking traces. Flames licked canvas, coughing oily smoke. A bang shook the air. Umber warhorn as the great Jon charged. Karstark spearmen followed, Robb at their head, ice-blue cloak streaming. They hit the disordered vanguard like frost-hungry wolves. Steel rang. Men cried. Robb's courser bounded a toppled wagon, gray wind beside, fangs flashing. Robb swung his long sword, catching a knight beneath the gorget. Blood misted white air. Ned left the tower, descending spiral stairs 3 at a time. He mounted and rode with his reserves, a wedge of 200 heavy horse. They thundered onto the causeway's east limb, crashing into Lannister rear lines. The lion banners wavered. Ned's sword cut an arc. He felt bone yield, smelled hot copper in frozen dawn. He pressed forward where Stafford's banner yet fluttered. Stafford saw him, leveled a lance, spurred. Ned angled his shield. Impact jarred his arm numb but held. He rode past, turning, hacked Stafford's exposed flank as the cousin twisted. Blood darkened gilded plate. The lion sigil slipped from the helm as Stafford sagged. A horn called retreat, Ser Kevin ordering fallback to the twins. But the causeway behind them burned, wagons ablaze. Smoke blinded riders. Marsh swallowed foot. Panic turned orderly ranks to chaos. Reed boats emerged, notched prows ramming stragglers. Arrows continued to fall. By midday the fighting ended. Crows gathered on mangled wagons, their cries harsh as torn linen. The moat reeked of burnt grain and damp death. Northmen dragged captive knights onto higher ground. Nurses bound wounds. Robb knelt beside Theon, laughing ragged around exhaustion. Theon clutched a split helm and boasted of 3 kills. Ned dismounted near the ruined center cart, gray stallion lathered. He surveyed the field. Less than 300 northern dead by count. Near 3,000 lions felled. Another 1,000 fled into bogs where crannogmen prowled. The reed banner, a 2-headed heron, rose over the largest spoil heap. Jon approached, helmet under his arm. Soot streaked his cheek. They're broken. For now. Ned wiped his blade. Tywin will hear and sharpen. Robb strode up, gray wind at heel, eyes bright. We did it. Ned clasped his shoulder. A bite, not the kill, but a deep bite. Great Jon Umber joined them, a grin lifting gray whiskers. I say we press to the twins, make Fry beg our crossing. Too soon. Ned looked south. We fortify the moat. We bury the dead. Then we send ravens east and west. The north has blooded the lion. He raised his voice. And while we hold the neck, no lion passes. Cheers rose weak but fierce. Ned listened, heart heavy yet hopeful. He thought of Catelyn on a mountain too high to see his banner, of Bran setting traps along ramparts, of Arya hiding Sansa behind secret doors. He thought of Robert amid a nest of vipers. Unaware wolves howled on his behalf. He prayed the king heard echoes carried on wind. That night fires dotted the causeway like a second sky. The northern host feasted on what provisions remained unburnt, shared songs older than any Southron script. Ned sat among them, not at high seat but beside a wounded pikeman who spoke of daughters knitting by hearth light. Ned listened as though to his own. When moon rose high he stepped aside, looking north. Across miles of swamp and ice he imagined Winterfell's towers shining moonsilver. He imagined Rickon counting stars from a window seat, imagining each a candle for father's return. He swore again he would return. Behind him Robb approached. The men speak your victory. It is theirs. Ned glanced at him. You fought well. Robb lifted his sword, studying the nicked edge. It felt right, as if my body remembered something my mind never knew. A wolf's blood. Ned placed a hand on his son's shoulder. But remember the cost. Robb nodded, gaze distant. Tomorrow we build cairns. And send word to every keep. Ned looked south. Tywin will come himself next. With steel, gold, and rage. Robb lifted his chin. Let him. In Robb's eyes, Ned saw his own at the same age. Before the trident, before Tower of Joy, before promises heavier than swords. He hoped the boy would not learn too quickly what such promises cost. Tywin read the Raven's report in his solar at Casterly Rock. Dusk limned the sea in blood and bronze outside the window slit. He set the parchment down with careful fingers, each ring catching dull light. Stafford was ever eager, he murmured. Kevin stood opposite, face lined. The siege trains lost with him. Tywin's eyes narrowed. Then we send coin where cannon failed. He unrolled a second scroll, ink still wet with wax. Riverrun's debts swell. Frey's purse hungers. Hoster Tully coughs his last. We bait hooks and wait. Kevin cleared his throat. The king will drink. Tywin's upper lip curled. And chase whores. He sealed the parchment. Summon Ser Adam with the outriders. We ride in a fortnight. And if the snows close the passes? Tywin looked east, where waves hammered cliff walls. Then we ride on stars. Winterfell received the Raven 2 days later. Sansa carried the scroll to the maester's turret herself, hands trembling. Arya hustled behind, scanning sky for more wings. Luwin cracked the seal, a golden lion skull. He read silently, face grayer by the line. Sansa whispered, "What news?" Luwin's voice shook. Lord Tywin musters at Casterly Rock with the full host of the West. 30,000 foot, near 10,000 horse. He will march the Gold Road to the Green Fork. Arya breathed. He means to avenge. He means to conquer, Luwin corrected. He names the act pacification. He warns the Riverlords not to interfere. Sansa clutched her skirts. The Riverlands will not stand aside. Nor can we stand alone. Luwin's quill scratched frantic on parchment. We must reach Lord Stark at once. 3 weeks later, wind howled through the neck, carrying sleet like knife dust. Ned's camp at Moat Cailin bristled with new palisades. Reed traps dotted the southern bogs. Ravens lined coop perches, restless under storm smell. Ned unrolled Luwin's message as snow hissed on torches. Tywin's numbers scrawled stark. Ned rubbed his beard. Robb waited, knuckles white. "Twice our count," Robb said. "More," Ned corrected. "Hill higher sells words from the free cities once Blackwater thaws. What do we do?" Robb's voice barely shook. "What wolves do." Ned folded the letter. "We hunt his flanks. We bleed his supply. We never meet him on ground of his choosing." A horn sounded, reed sentry. Figures approached from southeast, riders bearing flax-colored banners. Ned squinted. The fish of Tully shimmered beneath ice glaze. He strode forth as the riders halted. Edmure Tully swung down, beard rimmed with frost. Behind him, a dozen river knights bowed. "Uncle," Ned greeted, clasping arms. Edmure managed a grin. "My lord brother sends host and heart. Riverrun rides, and the Blackfish comes with all knights of the Trident." Ned's breath plumed. "We stand united." Edmure's grin widened. "The lion may roar, but the rivers flood his road." Robb exhaled, relief mixing with awe. Ned placed a hand on his son's back. "Send ravens to Bear Island and Last Hearth," he ordered. "Tell them the time comes." Robb nodded, hope fueling new fire. That night, banners of trout and direwolf rose side by side above Moat Cailin. Fires multiplied, melting icicles that hung like chandeliers from ramparts. Men sang songs of the hammer of justice, of the Grey Wolf King who turned lawn the clever schemes. Though wind moaned, hearts beat warmer. Ned stood atop the highest tower, scanning horizons veiled in snowfall. Somewhere beyond ghosts of white air marched a golden army. Somewhere above the clouds, Perhaps strange lights danced as watchmen of older wars yet to come. He touched the pommel of his sword. He thought of Catelyn's face across mountain skies, of Bran's careful maps, of Arya's restless blade, of Sansa's songs trembling towards bravery, of Jon's quiet loyalty forged anew in battle. He thought of Lyanna's tomb and the promise still unsaid. He closed his eyes and saw the weirwood's face bleeding sap onto earth. He tasted iron on the wind. He whispered to old gods and new, and in the hush between heartbeats, he felt Winterfell listening. Snow still whispered across the neck in fine, stinging veils when dawn bled pale gold behind the ragged towers of Moat Cailin. Campfires guttered under the new storm, scattering sparks that died before they could rise. Ned Stark woke before the first horn, rose from his bedroll, and stepped onto the parapet to look south. The air smelled of peat smoke, horse sweat, and faintly of blood not yet cleansed from yesterday's causeway. Beneath it all lay another scent, a metallic chill that spoke of war thickening like frost along a river's edge. Behind him the army stirred. Glover bowmen stamped frost from cloaks and rest-wrung their bows. Karstark men lit braziers to heat water for sharpening stones, and the women of Bear Island began their morning drill, shields thumping in rhythm with distant surf. Gray wind loped the perimeter, muzzle white-rimmed with rime. Every sound carried an undercurrent of expectancy. The North had tasted victory, but no one mistook yesterday's triumph for the war's end. Ned remained a long while, counting banners as they emerged from half-light. Trout, direwolf, flayed man, merman. Soon, if ravens reached their roosts, more would come. The sunburst of Castle, the pine of Tallheart, perhaps the crescent of Serwyn of the Mirror Shield reborn in some minor house's colors. Yet even hope lent a burden. More men meant more mouths, more wounded, more graves when the next clash came. And Tywin Lannister was coming, iron purpose pinned beneath his golden mantle. Hoofbeats climbed the ramp's broken stones. Robb appeared, helm tucked beneath one arm, hair unbraided and wild in the wind. He halted beside his father and followed Ned's gaze south. "Reed scouts report ripples across the fever water," Robb said. "Likely supply boats making their run from the Twins." Ned nodded. "They'll hug the deeper channels, thinking we dare not launch boats in winter. What if we do? Reed punts cannot fight heavy barges alone. We need better teeth." Ned's eyes tracked a pair of swans gliding on a lead of open water near the far tower. "Bring the blacksmiths, Willespe. Ike the prow of every crannog boat with iron like a boar snout. Then teach the women of Bear Island to row." Robb's grin came quick and fierce. "They'll like that." They descended into the yard, where Great John Umber was already bellowing for venison haunches and stronger ale. Greatjon's laughter echoed off stone as he saw Ned. "Lord Stark, fine moon to set a lion's tail alight again. Let's ride south and pull the whole pelt off this morn." "Soon," Ned said, clapping the giant's shoulder. "First we salt the tail." He issued orders, axe heads to be gathered for keel spikes, barrels of pitch hauled from storage, scouts to chart submerged sandbars where barges might founder. Great John thumped his chest in approval. Northmen loved nothing so well as a prey animal stuck belly up in bog. By mid-morning Reed bowmen had launched a dozen punts, prows armored in fresh-riveted blades. Meege Mormont's daughters Mara and Lyra clambered aboard the first, hefting short throwing spears. Onshore Howland Reed passed Ned a leather tube. "Maps of every tidal sweep," he said. "The Lion's pilots will run aground unless their gods are kinder than ours." "Let us hope they pray to gold," Ned replied. He thanked Howland and scanned the low horizons. Far behind lay Winterfell, too far for comfort. He clenched the maps. War was a game of distance. Every day, Tywin shrank the miles between his banners and Ned's children. In King's Landing, dawn broke sullen and wet. The Red Keep dripped with rainfall that smelled of mildew and forgotten graves. Robert Baratheon sat hunched on his throne, crown askew, as his council assembled. Cersei glided in last, clad in mourning black for cousins lost in the neck. She stood apart, green eyes tracking every sweaty tremor of the small council. Grand Maester Pycelle finished reading The Raven from Casterly Rock. His quavering voice carried across the throne room. And so my Lord Father is resolved to end this northern sedition swiftly, lest the realm bleed for the stubbornness of one man. The parchment crackled as Pycelle folded it shut. Signed in his lordship's own hand. Robert rubbed stubble dark as storm clouds, gaze unfocused. 10,000 horse? He muttered. Does he think me blind? Rage seemed to flicker, then gutter under fatigue. Bring me wine. No, Cersei said, soft but sharp enough to still the cupbearer. The king requires clear judgment. She stepped forward. Your grace, winter winds from the north carry talk of rebellion. Eddard Stark refuses your summons, slaughters loyal men, conspires with Tully traitors. My father rides to defend your crown. Across the room, Renly Baratheon rolled his eyes. Your father rides to defend your pride, sister. Enough! Robert's voice cracked like a whip. We will not bicker before half the court. Leave us, the council only. Guards swept gawkers from the hall. The massive doors boomed shut. Littlefinger lounged near a pillar, twisting a coin over his knuckles. An ironclad loan from the rock could ransom a city or two, he said lightly. If the king endorsed such a note, Lannister gold would feed the capital through winter, provided northern grain no longer flows. Stannis ignored the bait, jaw clenched. We cannot sit idle while Tywin musters. And what do you propose, brother? Robert growled. March north and burn every village between here and the neck? Stannis's lips compressed thinner. Summon the lords of the Crownlands. Demand Tywin stand down. Prove you wield the crown, not he. Cersei's laugh was icicles. Summon? The king asked Stark to come south. The wolf refused. The lion ensures obedience. Obedience forged of terror breaks. Varys whispered, emerging from shadow. And broken things cut. Robert pushed to his feet. You all chirp like crows. I will have quiet. He descended the steps, steps heavy as grief. At Cersei's passing curtsy he murmured, Tell your father to wait 1 fortnight for my word. Then we shall see. He strode out, wine forgotten. Cersei watched him leave, lips pale. Peter Baelish smiled, but only with his mouth. At the Eyrie, Catelyn listened to Lisa read Ned's second letter beside a brazier that shed more smoke than heat. Lisa's voice quavered when she reached the lines describing Tywin's latest musters. With rivermen at my flank, I can blunt his first thrust, but not a second, Catelyn's husband had written. Send me Knights of the Vale, or send me word of Robert's oath. Either may turn the tide. Beside the page Ned had drawn a tiny direwolf, outline smudged as if by hurried fingers. Lisa laid the parchment down, eyes brimming. He dares to ask for more sons to die. He dares to trust his wife's sister, Catelyn corrected, keeping her voice steady. The Eyries' lances would strike Tywin where he is weakest, his flank. The Eyries' lances keep my son safe. Lisa wrapped arms about herself. You saw the clan's arrows in the High Pass. Catelyn reached across the table. Jon Arryn died seeking truth. Would you hide that truth beneath these walls? Lisa recoiled. I will not feed Sweet Robin to the wolves. No one asks that. Catelyn steadied her tone. Send the Blackfish if you will not march. 10 falcon banners under Brynden Tully at Riverrun will rally the Riverlords. At that, Lisa's shoulders untensed a fraction. Brynden had been Jon Arryn's sword hand in all but name. Uncle Brynden may do as he pleases, Lisa murmured, but my gates stay closed. Catelyn accepted that wedge of victory. She would press the rest later, after sleep, after coaxing Maester Coleman to ease Lisa's night terrors. War was a siege of hearts long before sieges of stone. Night settled over Moat Cailin like a black cloak. Ned sat with Howland Reed at a small cookfire beneath the gatehouse tower. They spoke softly while Crannogman roasted eel wrapped in marsh leaves. Dreams drift across these waters, Howland said, eyes reflecting flame. Last night I dreamed the direwolf and the crane crossed paths beneath green trees. The wolf bled, but the crane held wounds unseen. Ned chewed eel thoughtfully. A bad omen? Dreams are riddles, not verdicts. Howland adjusted the leaves. But sometimes riddles carry roads. Then we walk them in good company, Ned said. He poured a measure of ale into carved wooden cups. To roads. They drank. Beneath them, in the tower's lowest cell, Stafford Lannister coughed blood onto straw. A spear shaft protruded from bandaged ribs. Maester Lomaise had left it in rather than risk worse bleeding. Jon Snow kept the guard there that night, ghost curled between damp stones. The prisoner's fevered breaths rasped like parchment tearing. Stafford's eyes focused a moment. "Bastard," he whispered. "You'll hang when Tywin wins." Jon's voice remained level. "Speak louder. The dead outside might not hear." Stafford laughed, and a bubble of scarlet frothed his lips. "Even dead. Lions feast on you northborn wolves. You'd best pray they feast soon." Jon dipped a cloth in water, pressed it to the man's brow. Some part of him hated the kindness, yet another part, deeper, refused to let a man die parched. "Else you'll starve as carrion." Stafford's eyelids fluttered and closed. In the silence, Ghost raised his head, ears perking. From the highest arrow slits came the lonely hoot of a marsh owl. Jon listened until his own heartbeat steadied. Whatever came, he would meet it on open ground. 3 days later, wind changed. It swept from the south, tasting faintly of forge smoke and rich loam. Riverland's air, heavy with rumors and refugees. Wagons clattered up the causeway. Small folk from Ragman's Wharf, timberites from Pink Maiden, fishermen from Salt Pans. They told the same tale. Lannister outriders burning farmsteads along the Green Fork, ransoming millers, hanging Blackwood sentries. Tywin's vanguard had outraced word of his main host, striking deep as a spear point. Riverlords gathered at Riverrun, but raiders rode unopposed. Ned convened his captains within the gatehouse hall. Torches sputtered in the damp, casting jerked shadows on mossy walls. "We cannot hold Moat Cailin with half a host while the Riverlands bleed," Ned began. "Tywin stretches us thin to force a choice." Great Jon pounded a fist on oak. "The choice is simple. Ride south and rip his spine out." Robb's eyes shone. "Father, if we march now, we might smash his outriders before they regroup." Karstark frowned. "And leave the neck unguarded for the main host." Howland Reed lifted a reed staff. "My folk can harry any force under 10,000 through these bogs. Let the lion test that." Ned looked to his son. "If we ride, Robb leads the van. Command the main. Reed watches the neck. Jon rides as scout." Jon accepted with a curt nod. Ser Roderick added, "Leave a garrison here under Galbart Glover. If Tywin pushes this road, we light the beacons." Decision solidified like hot iron plunged in snow. Ned dismissed the council, ordered ravens to Riverrun. "We ride. To Bear Island, hold Winterfell with your lives. And to Winterfell itself, pray." Before dawn the host formed anew, Trout and Direwolf banners side by side at the fore. Fires burned down, leaving coals glowing like scattered rubies. Ned mounted his stallion, studying the gray-blue sky, a promise of more snow, perhaps rain. He felt every eye upon him. Karstark's dour, Umber's fierce, his sons expectant, and raised his sword. "For the north," he spoke, "for winter not ruled by fear, for the pack." Thousands of voices answered in a single roar. The gates of Moat Cailin groaned open, and the column spilled onto the causeway, wolves in search of lions. Behind, Howland Reed extinguished the last beacon lantern until only ash marked Ned Stark's passing. Then he vanished into the mists. Winterfell greeted first thaw with sullen gray skies. Meltwater dripped from gargoyles, splashing into still-frozen pools. Maester Luwin marshaled stewards to scrape snow from the rookery roof before Waite collapsed timbers. Bran watched from an upper balcony, maps forgotten at his lap. He scanned the yard where archers drilled under Ser Roderick's eye. Rickon among them, wooden bow too large, yet arrow after arrow thudded into a straw target. Enthusiasm mattered as much as aim at his age. Across the yard Arya vaulted onto a half-collapsed cart, practicing leaps between sparring dummies. She tucked, rolled, and sprang, always landing light. Sansa and Lady watched from a window slit, embroidering new wolf banners. Septa Mordain hovered, pointing out missed stitches. Sansa's face showed frustration, but her needle flashed faster. Bran wheeled his chair toward the library. He needed another roll of parchment to copy measurements for the Barbican's murder holes. Inside the gallery, he heard voices, Mikken arguing with Old Nan. "Told you the smithy needs twice the iron," Mikken said. "And I'm telling you there's none till the train's from White Harbor," Old Nan replied, surprisingly sharp. "Don't waste what you have on fancy straps." Bran rolled in. "What straps?"
Megan sighed.
"For a new pulley chair. Wanted to build you easier wheels, lad." Warmth bloomed at Bran's cheeks. "Better use the iron for arrowheads," he said, though part of him ached to accept. Old Nan patted his shoulder. Stark words, that. Up the rookery stairs, Bran found Maester Luwin hunched over a fresh scroll. His chain of office rattled as he straightened. "Good. Your eyes." He handed Bran the parchment. "From your mother." Bran read quickly. "Uncle Brynden rides to Riverrun with 200 knights. Robb and father march south. The Vale yet stands aloof. Pray for swift victory. Be brave, little lord." Bran swallowed. "I must send father something." "What will you send?" "My next map," he decided, "of the causeways past the Twins. He might need another trap." That night, Bran sketched by candlelight. Outside, unknown to him, two shadowy figures slipped beneath Winterfell's outer wall. Sel's words dressed in gray, guided by a coin from Casterly Rock. They crept toward the kennels, seeking pups to ransom or kill. Shaggy Dog smelled them first. His growl rumbled like thunder. Summer answered. The ensuing screams brought guards running. Come morning, Theon displayed two severed hands on pikes, gold coins still clenched in one. Arya said no words, but oiled needle in silent fury. Winterfell's heart grew harder. Ned's host reached the crossing after 6 days of forced march. Lord Walder Frey met them on the south bank, flanked by grandsons like a man attended by ghosts of youth. He offered thin ale, thinner smiles, and demanded bonds of marriage for safe passage. 2 of Lord Stark's sons and a daughter or two, perhaps a trout wed to a weasel. Ned reeled off polite refusals until Walder's lips tightened. "The river rises," Walder warned, eyeing gray swells slugging past the western arch. "Come morning, no wagons cross for a fortnight." Robb muttered oaths under breath. Ned only smiled. "Then we camp. Your bridge may toll only carrion before long." Walder sniffed, sensing threat, and retired to consult with lesser phrase. By dusk, he agreed to ferry the host by barge for half the demanded price and one vague promise of gratitude. Ned signed with a smear of charcoal. Behind him, Edmure Tully muttered, "One day I'll drown that dotard in his own moat. Pray it is this day," Theon quipped, eager for blood. Ned hushed them. Grudge or no, Frey remained a hinge upon which the Riverlands swung. Too many hinges were already splintering. Across the river, smoke spires marked torched villages. Scouts reported Lannister outriders pillaging as far east as Seaguard. Ser Adam Marbrand led 1,000 heavy horse north from the Golden Tooth. Tywin himself camped near Harrenhal, fortress of blackened memories. Worst, ravens from King's Landing grew erratic. Some bore torn wings, others never arrived. Someone along the Trident was plucking messages from the sky. Ned sent Jon and a dozen of the mountain clans to slip around Harrenhal and cut the rider lines. Robb chafed to go, but Ned kept him close. One heir already rode beyond view. Battle came 2 days later on the Red Fork's mist-choked floodplain. Marbrand's heavy horse clattered out of dawn. Lances leveled, horns braying. Umber screamed defiance and met them, axe to spear, in a crash that shook dew from willows. Karstark flank charged, splitting cohesion. Gray wind darted under hooves, hamstringing mounts, dragging riders. Robb stayed loose, guiding reserves where gaps formed, voice hoarse with shouted commands. Ned watched his son's composure sharpen like a drawn blade. He felt pride and fear in equal measure. The battle lasted till noon. When horns of recall cried, Marbrand's host lay broken among reeds, the red fork running rust-brown. Captives numbered hundreds, among them war-crimson cloaks threaded with silver, House Crakehall, House Lefford, lesser lions. Ned spoke with their officers, learned Tywin had seized Pink Maiden and sent Gregor Clegane to ravage the Blackwood lands. Fires lit the horizon nightly. That night Edmure pleaded to rush to Riverrun's relief. Ned considered. Tywin moved pieces with ruthless foresight. Burn the Blackwoods, draw Tully beyond his walls, encircle and crush. To foil him required more than swords. Send riders to Riverrun, Ned ordered. Lord Hoster holds inside his walls. We strike Clegane first. Edmure brightened. The mountain butcher. He'll burn slower than he kills, Ned said. But he burns. They marched at dawn. In King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister arrived unannounced, mud-speckled, eyes bright. He found Varys in a garden feeding doves. My sister believes I was busy in the Westerlands, Tyrion said, plucking seed from the eunuch's dish. Let us say my errand strayed. Indeed, Varys smiled. The hand's chair sits empty waiting for wise men. Spare me. Tyrion shook mud from his cloak. Tell me of my father's war. Varys's voice was silk. He wins every battle, and yet each victory sends more swords to Lord Stark. The small folk cheer wolves now, mutter that lions stole the grain. One wonders how many triumphs the realm can endure. Tyrion snorted. My family is forging more foes than swords. Is that it? A smith may find both red-hot. Tyrion contemplated the doves. Time for another sort of smith, perhaps. At court next day, Tyrion offered Robert a jug of Dornish red and a wager. Name me master of coin for a moon's turn. If by then your coffers do not outweigh my father's threats, I'll shave my head and join the Silent Sisters. Robert laughed so hard wine spattered his beard. He agreed, still laughing. Cersei's smile froze at the edges. That evening Tyrion penned secret drafts, loans to the Iron Bank under Baratheon credit, purchase orders for Reach grain convoys, letters to Braavosi captains promising knighthoods and trade monopolies if they sailed for White Harbor at once. He sent ravens bearing forged signatures, others with his own sigil. Mischief raced on wings. In the morning gold cloaks arrested 2 of Littlefinger's factors smuggling wagons of Riverland grain into Lannister warehouses. The city buzzed. Robert roared with delight. Cersei seethed, and Tyrion raised his tankard to the sky, wondering if wolves would howl gratitude on the wind. Gregor Clegane's raids ended in a dawn of screaming steel beside the Maidenpool Road. Ned's vanguard hit the mountain's column at a misty ford where cattail banks muffled hoofbeats. Clegane's men, drunk on slaughter, reeled under the ferocity of northerners and raged by fields aflame. Robb led the first charge, Theon and Jon the second. Edmure's knights sealed escape. Clegane fought like a storm, hewing Karstark men in half, smashing shields with his greatsword. When he spied Robb, he bellowed, spurring straight into the swarming melee. Grey wind intercepted, jaws locking on Clegane's stirrup. The mountain's blade clipped the wolf's ear, scattering blood in bright arcs. Before he could swing again, Jon's sword crashed against his gorget. The blow staggered the brute. Robb hacked Clegane's reins. Theon's arrow pierced the destrier's eye. Horse and rider toppled into the ford, sending spray skyward. Clegane vanished beneath thrashing water and mud. When the melee ended, only a severed helm floated in eddies, no body. Whether Gregor drowned or crawled for darker lairs, none could say. But the mountain's men broke utterly. Smoke of burning farmsteads eased, replaced by the smell of fresh-turned clay. Makeshift graves for Clegane's victims. Afterward Ned walked among refugees lining the road. Ragged farmers, barefoot children clutching singed dolls. He offered wagons of bread, bound wounds, heard sobbed tales of lion men ripping babes from mothers' arms. In each voice he caught echoes of Brandon and Lyanna's ghosts, and the vow he had mouthed beneath the weirwood decades ago sharpened anew. He would not fail innocence a second time. Robb watched his father, understanding flickering in eyes grown older this fortnight than in 19 winters. That night, as banners drooped in exhausted torpor, Robb entered Ned's tent. "Father," he began, "when Anya Waynwood's riders arrive, let me take them east to clear the King's Road. The small folk flee toward us but find only lions. They need a guardian." Ned weighed the request. "And leave my flank thin? Leave your son where his sword does most good." Robb's voice did not tremble. "You taught me a lord guards those who cannot guard themselves." Ned saw not the boy from Winterfell's yard, but the young man leading charges through Arrowhail. Fatigue pulled at him, war's endless choosing. At last he nodded. "Take Umber's light horse as well, and the Galbart bowmen, but send ravens each dawn." Later Ned knelt alone, mapping new formations by candlelight. He marked the ford in charcoal, Victory. Then he drew a lion above Harrenhal, a wolf above Riverrun. The space between was blood-red cross-hatching. "Here the river meets the snow," he wrote. "Here the realm decides." He blew out the candle. Darkness closed like a cloak, but he felt the map alive beneath fingertips, pulsing with possibility. At Winterfell, a second sabotage struck. Guards found the granary's backdoor bar splintered, sacks of rye torn, enough grain poisoned with ground nightshade to feed 100 men their last meal. Maester Luwin discovered the taint before evening's baking. Panic rippled among servants. Fear for siege stores grew palpable. Arya stalked the battlements that night, needle gleaming in moonlight. She found fresh boot prints by the granary wall, small, lighter than a man's. Sansa's gasp behind her made Arya whirl. Sansa pointed, a ladder-scuffed stone. They followed clues to a servant's and used storeroom where a scrawny boy cowered. The baker's new helper, paid in silver stags marked with a lion crest. His tears-soaked tunic as guards dragged him before Lady Meage Mormont. Mormont wasted no time. "Dark deeds, dark penalty," she growled, and ordered the boy strapped to a post at midday. Bran rolled forward. "Stop," he called. The yard hushed, crows cawing above. "He's no killer, only hungry." Bran held up a small loaf he'd taken from the kitchens. "Feed him, then send him to the wall. Night's Watch needs men. We need fewer ghosts." Meage studied Bran, then the boy. Finally she grunted, "The little lord speaks." She changed the sentence. The boy sobbed thanks. Bran's heart hammered. Had he done right? Justice tempered with mercy felt heavy. Yet he knew Ned would approve. The direwolves, watching, settled tales in agreement. South of Harrenhal, Tywin's main host finally rolled forth. 30,000 infantry in iron-rimmed columns, 10,000 cavalry, trebuchets rocking on mammoth wheels. Scouts brought word to Ned at sunset on the banks of the Tumblestone. The Lion marched west first, to secure roads and break Riverrun's siege preparations. Within 3 days Tywin would stand before the Tully walls. Ned's army could not outrace him, but they could reach the high bluffs above Fairmarket and force battle on ground of their choosing. He ordered night marches. Torches bobbed like fireflies across dark meadows. Peasants stared from doorways, crossing themselves as wolves trotted among armored men. On the second dusk, Ned paused in a ruined sept to water horses. The shattered dome opened to a sky aflame with sunset. He knelt by the altar's rubble, touched charred stone. Once he had knelt here as Robert's standard-bearer, praying before the drive to the Trident. Memory washed over him. Young faces, shattered lances, Rhaegar's ruby-scattered breastplate. Old wars coiled into new. Robb found him, used sword slung. "We gained 6 leagues." Ned rose. "Tomorrow we rest the foot, then climb the west ridge. Boulders there can rain on his van. Then we strike. Then we hold." Ned's gaze drifted across blackened saints. "Tywin wins by impatience. We answer with patience." Robb grimaced. "Patience kills as sure as swords. Only if you mistake it for stillness." They left the September. Neither saw the cloaked figure slipping from shadows, raven perched on his wrist. One of Varys's little birds, traveling far indeed. The bird flew at dawn, message-tied, toward King's Landing. Knowledge moved swifter than armies. Robert Baratheon caught that message at dawn, still drunk from the night's revel. He read of Tywin's unstoppable host, of Stark maneuver, of river lords mustering behind walls. He crushed the parchment in meaty fist. Silence drowned the throne room. Finally he roared, "If my lords will burn half the realm to roast one wolf, I'll drown them all." He ordered armor fitted. King Robert would ride north with the royal guard, command the war himself. Cersei pleaded, argued, threatened. He ignored her. Yet as the king departed to ready horses, a fit of coughing doubled him over. Blood splattered his sleeve. Pycelle seized on it. "Your grace is unwell. A chill of the lungs, ride and you risk death." Cersei pressed the point, eyes bright. Robert wavered, breath rattling. "Send Ser Barristan in my stead," Pycelle urged. At length the king relented, slumping in his throne like a toppled oak. The court buzzed with rumors of poison and curses. Tyrion watched from balcony, mind spinning webs. That night Tyrion dispatched a raven of his own to Riverrun. The stag is shackled by his own heart. Beware the lion's roar and the queen's silence. Fairmarket's heights loomed pale against a slate sky when Ned's army arrived. They dug ditches, rolled boulders to cliff edges, positioned scorpions along switchback trails. Edmure commanded riverboat archers, hidden in reed beds along the south bank. Jon Snow returned with news. Tywin's outriders 5 miles east, advance full. On the second dawn horns blared. Golden banners crested hills like a tide of sunrise. Tywin rode at their head, expression carved from stone. He halted at spear's length beyond arrow range, studied the ridgeworks. Behind him trebuchets unlimbered, horses whickered. Ned rode forward alone until both hosts held breath. He raised his visor. "Lord Tywin," his voice echoed. "Turn south. The north will not kneel." Tywin's eyes were cold fires. "I come not for kneeling but for ending." "Ending what?" "Defiance." Tywin's voice did not rise. The word carried on still air. Ned raised his sword hilt before his face like a vow. "Then learn what winter is." Tywin said nothing more, turned, and signaled. Drums rolled. The lion host advanced into range. Arrows blackened sky. Scorpions answered. Rocks tumbled, crushing spear phalanxes. The ground shook as 2 rivers of rage collided beneath those bleak hills. Robb led center shield wall. Great John flanked right. Blackfish commanded left. Tywin's heavy columns smashed forward but found footholds treacherous. Slopes slick under spring melt. Ned watched lines bend, flex. When Lannister knights pressed the center, he unleashed hidden Glover spears from ravine mouth. Iron hedgehogs shredding horse ranks. Trumpets wailed. Dust rose in choking curtains. Day stretched into burning noon, then dusk. Neither line broke. At last Tywin signaled withdrawal, temporary, one sensed, for the lion does not retreat forever. He left behind 2,000 dead strewn among shattered pines and smoking engines. Ned's losses neared 1,000, including 50 of Robb's guard. Yet the ridge still bore the direwolf guise. Night found Ned among surgeons, binding wounds, whispering comfort. Tywin camped a mile east, fires glittering like an ember sea. Between them lay a no-man's land of groans and cawing birds. Snow began to fall, slow, lazy flakes drifting through torch glare. Winter arriving on silent feet. Ned stood beneath the first flakes, opened his palm to the sky. Across the field he saw Tywin's silhouette outside a pavilion, staring likewise. 2 men older than their armor, bound by pride and promises. Snow dusted Tywin's golden mantle until Lion became ghost. Within Ned, memory stirred. Lyanna's hand cold as stone, Brandon's scream, Robert's despair. He whispered to the snow, "Not again." The flakes melted on his tongue like vows renewed. Robb approached, limping. "They'll charge tomorrow." "Yes, in snow, and we in winter." Ned clasped his son's shoulder. "Sleep. Dawn writes the next page." Robb gazed toward lion camps, eyes storm-cloud dark. "I fear no dawn." Ned thought, "It is the dusk we must fear." But he said, "Then fear nothing." They parted. Ned walked to the edge of camp where gray wind patrolled, laid a hand on the direwolf's head, felt heartbeat steady, ancient, deep as root. Above, the flakes swirled thicker, erasing banners, tents, tracks. By midnight, the ridge was a white scabbard waiting for steel, the sky a blanket burying sins. Somewhere in that muffled dark, a single horn blew, the watch on the wall, perhaps, or memory. Ned raised his head, listening. The note carried over fields, beyond rivers, up the neck, through forests and stone and snow, all the way to Winterfell, where a boy named Bran paused over his map and whispered, "They're calling." In Winterfell's Godswood, the heart tree's face wept sap like frozen tears. Bran awoke from a dream of ravens circling a burning crown. He wheeled through the midnight corridors until he found Maester Luwin reading by lantern. "Send a raven south," Bran said, voice shaking. "Tell father. The snow will hide the lion's eyes but sharpen the wolf's teeth." Luwin blinked. "A curious riddle." "Yes," Bran whispered, "but it is true." The raven flew at dawn, black wings cutting pale sky. Behind it rode unseen threads of prophecy, fate, love, and doom, binding Winterfell to battlefields far away. The War of the Five Kings had never come. Instead, a war of oaths and winters unfolded, each side forging new shapes upon the world's anvil. And somewhere beyond all reckonings, long dormant powers stirred in the frost powers neither wolf nor lion had yet named. Nevertheless, morning would break and swords would rise, and Ned Stark would stand upon his ridge while snow fell thicker than lies, and Tywin Lannister would gamble the last of his lineage's terror against a man who refused to abandon home. The tale, like the storm, had only begun.